All right, everyone, I have a treat for you all. I'm sitting here with I'm calling the lead of the Path of Champions, my new best friend, as we've been hanging out earlier today. Shawn Main, how's it going today?
It's nice to be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you. This is going to be really fun. So for people out there who don't know who you are, why don't you just kind of let people know what you do at Riot and your role with Path of Champions?
Yeah, so I've been at Riot for about 4.5 years now, working on Legends of Runeterra that whole time. I contributed a lot to the initial design of the game, led the design for Call of the Mountain, and for the last year, I've been working on kind of what was labs and with a lot of the experiments that have led up to Path of Champions, and for the last 6 months or so, working on Path of Champions.
Nice. That's awesome. I know, like, for me, one of my favorite things, I love, like, story narrative card games, like roguelike deck builders and all that. So when we were getting all of the different labs modes, that's kind of like what, like, I became addicted to those. I'm like, I would sit there and stream, I'm like, do you guys really want me to play ladder? Because I could be playing Saltwater Scourge. So that's actually a question that I feel like I have to explain a lot. And I just kind of like make up facts from what I've seen on, Riot's publications. But how does that kind of play in the Saltwater Scourge, the Lab of Legends and all that versus the Path of Champions that we have now? I guess there's like a lot of people have confusion on what those are versus like this being a full PvE mode. Do you kind of want to elaborate on how you guys have been using that?
Yeah, so we've about a year ago, or actually here, let me give the full history stepping back from there. So Labs has been a part of our game for a long time. It's kind of been intended, it was initially conceptualized as like, this is a testing ground for us to try out like, new modes, new mechanics, things like that. And I feel like about a year ago, kind of the leadership of lore was talking about like kind of a mode that is about power progression at its core. Yeah. And at that time, I was actually very excited to kind of shift from sets to like working on that specifically. And Lab of Legends was kind of the first experiment that we ran in that as part of Labs. Actually, I'm going into the full history here.
Yeah. Okay. No, this is good. I love it. I love a good history lesson.
So actually, before Lab of Legends, the very first PvE thing that we really explored was Journey to the Peak, which was like when Call of the Mountain came out, was a PvE mode and actually had some of the elements that we've kind of kept through of like the kind of the passive powers, things like that. But like Lab of Legends was when we really were first saying like, hey, we think there's something to making this like a permanent game mode. Let's go into labs and like run some experiments, see what players like, see what like really feel out the space. So that was, initially conceptualized as like, here's the roguelike mode. We added in like the different difficulty tiers as part of one of the first updates to that. And then kind of Saltwater Scourge was the second big experiment that we ran, which was like, okay, we're kind of like excited about the core gameplay of this. What if we added in a few more RPG elements to this? Some of those I think were successful. Some of those we've kind of backed away from. And then now Path of Champions is really like the culmination of those experiments, like trying to take like the best of them, turn this into like a more permanent mode. And so like Path of Champions is here to stay. It is, we're going to be expanding it. We're probably going to continue to make additions, but like that core gameplay of it is something that is now just like part of lore moving forward. We think PvE is like a huge potential addition to the game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's awesome. It's one of those things, when the game was first coming out and like the first closed beta and like the first open beta, just like talking about, I forgot who it was. I don't remember. It might have been Umbridge who I was chatting with and just talking about like ways to make it more feel like an alive like ecosystem, not just a player versus player 1v1 mode, like different fun ways to interact with the game. And because like, the rule set of Play Runeterra or Runeterra as itself is, not just a you can't just use it as only a competitive beat someone else down, rank up. So that's what excites me, is just being able to use the rule set of the base game to tell these different stories and go through. I mean, looking at the different ways that you can tell stories in different regions, like, it excites me for the future of what's possible. And I'm not going to make you get into that because I don't want to make you get in trouble or anything, but it excites me and makes me happy. I am curious, though. I'm sure I don't know what you're allowed to say or what you can answer, but going through and developing from the different modes to what it is now, what were some of the things that kind of didn't make the cut, or things you tried out and didn't really work?
Yeah, I'll say first, I totally agree with you. Like, I think one of the strengths of just a card game is like it is this flexible rule set, and there are all these objects that you can use in so many different ways, and really create different experiences through layers of rules that just change how you're using things. So I'm all with you, and I'll also say I think one of the strengths of lore on the whole is how storyful it all is. But yeah, some of the things that didn't work out. So I think we always wanted, with the original Lab of Legends, to have more opponents. That kind of the way that you keep playing through the same enemies over and over again. We always were really excited to get more variety in terms of not just what you're doing, but the opposition that you're playing. And at the time, we just never quite had the bandwidth to figure out what that looked like. Saltwater Scourge kind of really expanded on that. Like I said, we went more RPG there.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that was kind of this I've had many conversations about is the decision for that at its core to be less roguelike and more RPG, where you kind of can't fail. That you're always gonna if you die in an encounter, you resurrect. You can keep fighting through. We kind of came, I think, to think that wasn't the right path for the game. That the game, that what was working so much was this all these core steps where we show you 3 cards, pick one of them. We show you 3 powers, pick one of them, and we kind of need to test you almost in what those decisions were, and if you butt up against something that you can't win, no problem. Great, start over, go through the mode again, make some different choices, and you'll be able to be tested in a different way. And the RPG part, where you couldn't fail and you kept leveling up and going, kind of wasn't a good pairing with that core make a bunch of decisions that even have moderate to heavy RNG elements to them. So that's, I feel is the biggest thing that we pivoted away from, as we've gotten to kind of this final iteration is no, we really think it can have this roguelike center. There's some challenges because that loop of dying and respawning and making some other decisions is kind of core to that experience, and has some challenges to it, but we think that's the right one for the core of the mode.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like that's probably something that's hard to balance, especially if you're, wanting to have roguelike elements, but still, focusing more on the story RPG. It's how difficult do you make it? Do you go full on no progression? Do you do too much progression? I feel like getting that right would be very, very difficult. So, I mean, props to you. I feel like you've made a pretty good balance with it. I hope you're happy with it.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very happy with where we've landed with that. I think, there's always only so much balance testing we can do before it's released to thousands of players, and the meta progression element comes in. So I'm confident that is something we will be tweaking over time to make some things easier, make some things harder. But that's something that's there's always those fun moments when you release it to players and oh, here are some surprises.
Yeah, well, I mean,
hopefully nothing has exploded.
There's only so many of you guys testing it versus millions of people playing it. It's all right, someone found a way to break a thing. Sorry, we weren't able to test literally every possible outcome.
So much fun though is if players come up with some combo that we haven't seen before, like in this mode, we can be like, oh my god, that's awesome, like, yes, use that to like, beat Victor, and like then the next game maybe you don't get that same combo. It's much less, we've got such higher tolerance than like PvP competitive, where like, if we see a broken combo in like live, like you kind of have to be really nervous. Is that going to be a problem? But we can celebrate it, and that's fun.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. It's something I wanted to, I guess, bring up is how does it feel, balancing for a PvE, like a single player experience versus a competitive experience. How does that kind of feel like? Because like you said, you're not balancing for like tournament play or like, something like that. Is it like more liberating, or is it just a different mindset? What's that kind of like?
Yeah, it definitely it is really fun because we get to be so much like there aren't a lot of the constraints that you normally have in PvP. Not just some of like the balance challenges, but just like there's so much of the work in PvP is like, okay, make sure there's like counterplay and weaknesses, and like what if maybe this is fun for you to do, but not so fun if your opponent does it, and like those a lot of those requirements kind of like soften dramatically when like, well, I don't know, like the Trifarian Might is one of my favorite powers in the mode, where you like when you play a big unit, it automatically strikes the enemy, and there's not like a skill in the middle or something for them to respond to. It's just like, smash and they're gone. We definitely couldn't do that in PvP, but like, that's okay. You can beat up the AI. That's what it's there for, in fact. So like that is really, really fun as a designer, to like, have those freedoms to like step outside what we usually do.
Do you ever have you or your team ever purposely put in like, I guess like not really like Easter eggy, but like some secret combos that about, like that might purposely break the mode just because you're like, oh, this would be funny if you got this, right set of powers?
They're not quite that speeding. Definitely we have played it enough that we've seen some combos that like players haven't come across. I mean, I think with this was the first we really did like the PvE only cards, and some of those are pretty bananas, and not only are some of them pretty bananas, but some of them like really are like hidden inside like special encounters that are pretty rare. So I actually feel like I haven't seen like a lot from players like even coming across some of those cards. So I think like that's probably the biggest thing that's like is feeling like the Easter eggs hidden in there.
Yeah. No, you mentioned it yourself, the PvE only cards. I'm curious, like how far along in like development for this specific mode did you guys kind of decide that you're going to have cards that are specific to just this mode? And if you don't know, there are cards that you can't put in your collection and play against other players on ladder. There are cards specifically just for the Path of Champions. Like when in the development cycle did you guys decide to do that?
That was interesting because the work of this was kind of divided between myself and I'm hesitating because like how much to get into all the internal structures of work, but basically Mel Lee led up kind of all of the story adventures, all of the ones with the like arcane inspired champions. And so very early on, she was identifying like that she wanted like new cards for the mode, both to kind of stay in Piltover Zon for all of those adventures and make some of them like sufficiently like welcoming. They were just going to need new content to fill that out. But kind of halfway into the process, she realized like, oh, I asked for more cards than we're necessarily going to we're going to need to use. And I mean, some of those were really simple cards. Some of those were like the treasure cards that each champion has that are like, really bananas. And she kind of asked the rest of us working on Power, like, hey, would you want to take advantage of these? And we were super eager to jump in there and like, make them more kind of, we added two categories of like, let's make some cards that are primarily for the enemies that are kind of on the slightly weaker end. And let's make, because, ones that are okay for the enemies to use. and then let's make some like bananas cards that are like really exciting things that like, like I was saying, kind of break the bounds of what we would normally do.
Yeah, no, and like it's pretty cool to think that a way that you can balance difficulty is how the power level of cards you give the AI versus, power level of cards that you give yourself. I feel like that definitely leads to, for the future of the mode, being able to keep it fresh and exciting and make it different than just feel like when you're playing against people, you get these different, beyond just regular power ups, which is, awesome and fun. And each run is different because of your power up. So you get a whole arsenal of new toys to play with. It's like going to the toy store every time and you get these new stuff to play with. So I think that's pretty awesome.
The other I was going to say is on the balancing side, like frequency is actually like a tool that we have just available now, is like things like that are like, well, this may be like a combo that's like really, really strong, or even an individual card that's really strong, but like how often does it show up becomes this really meaningful
that makes sense,
metric
yeah.
for limiting it. Yeah.
No, that's I wouldn't have even thought about that. That's pretty cool. I like that. So these
so
secret
that it kind
nuggets.
of becomes the spice, exactly.
Yeah.
That like, all the cards that you're normally experiencing are part of this, but then like that one time when you get Poro Party, it is gonna like dominate your experience because that card is bananas. Yeah. But yeah.
No, I love it. So do you have like any like specific, I guess, like stories or lessons that you've learned kind of going between, developing this mode, things that, any, I guess just like kind of any exciting stories that stick out to you that you kind of just want to share with people?
Oh, that is, I think that is a really interesting question.
It's my job, bringing out the interesting ones.
I think, the thing that's really been just like such a joy to work on, to be honest, is the fact that like every run is different. And so I think like it has been really fun. I don't know. I have not ever been like a competitively minded player. Yeah. Especially, but like, when you're in that mindset and like you have to play the same games over and over again to get like those marginal edges that you're learning about, that I don't know what I start trying to get at actually is just like, I have found it such a joyful mode to test because there's just so much variety in it that like it's really fun to like jump into a game and kind of see what's going to happen. And that is both like personally as a gamer where I get a lot of my joy, but also like as a dev so much of the testing is about like seeing different things come up and seeing those different combos, and like there's challenges to that too, because like a huge challenge we have in testing is, did I just get a high roll or something, and like now I'm crushing enemies, and like, the baseline, actually we probably need to adjust the difficulty in some other way. All of those elements can be extra challenging, but they're also just extra fun to test. So I don't know, it's been one of my favorite experiences through the process is every time we're doing like heavy playtesting, and it's just like a bunch of designers getting on a call together, and we're kind of comparing notes and sharing experiences, and someone's sharing their screen, and seeing what other people are discovering in the mode, and seeing if you can like surprise them with an enemy or surprise them with an encounter that they weren't expecting is like, I don't know, delightful to do.
I love that. All right, I'm gonna ask some more hard hitting questions. So I feel like it's got to be really hard. As Runeterra is based in the League of Legends universe. How do you go about picking which champions you are going to have available for this mode? Because I know it's hard whenever there's certain champions who people latch onto and love, i.e. the Yasuos and all of Aries and all those of the world, stuff that isn't even in the game. But how do you how can you go about choosing which champions that you wanted to have for this first Path of Champions release?
Yeah, that is a interesting question. Oh no, I drove you away.
Nope, I'm here. I had to turn on my fan.
Oh yeah. Um, so there's a couple things that I mean, this was easy because it was very much initially there from those story adventures, like I mentioned, that were kind of like inspired by, but very distinct from the Arcane show.
Yeah.
You know, to celebrate just that moment, we wanted to do some champions from Piltover and Zon. We also had kind of the existing Saltwater Scourge champions that we wanted to use. We actually went back and forth on what the third region we're going to introduce with this was going to be, and I'm pausing as I'm like, how much should I reveal behind the curtain?
Yeah.
That there were some challenges. So just as we were working on like that world map, we were running into some challenges with one of the other regions.
Okay.
Where that was taking the artist a little bit of extra time, and design was like, oh, you know what, let's make a change here. You know what, it's super popular and we're happy to just go ahead and like let's pivot to Ionia. The artists were happy because they had a little bit more time to work on some of like the unique considerations that are going to go into like doing a vertical map as opposed to the Ionia.
Yeah.
And so then we just started looking at like, what are the champions that would be fun to include there? What are ones that kind of fit the mode particularly well? And then kind of like you're saying, picking out some of the popular ones, we had to get Yasuo in there and, make sure he could shine.
If Yasuo's not in something, people will lose their minds. It's absurd. It's become a joke here. People love to give me a hard time. I'm not a big fan of Yasuo myself. So people get so mad. And that was because I came into I had before Runeterra, I didn't know anything about Riot Games because I wasn't a League player. And so when it came in, I just didn't like the card. I'm like, oh, this card seems boring. And people were like, well, it's Yasuo. Like, he's the swordsman. I'm like, I don't care what he does in League. Whatever. He seems lame. So I got a lot of flack for that.
Fun though, sometimes getting to defy those expectations people have. I think there's a few champions that we've gotten to do that are, like a card game can do a little bit distinctly from League of Legends. Yeah. And so like getting to surprise people when we do like Aurelion Sol is a giant thing, or ones that like really get to like defy the bounds that players might know the champions as.
Yeah, no,
I guess that's the flip side of Yasuo is popular and
exactly. That's a good. I mean, this is a storytelling mode, and you can use this as a way to make lesser known champions that people might not pick as much because they're not as meta calls or whatever. In a mode like this, it's not all about just winning and crushing your foes every time. You got to do exciting stuff.
Yeah, there's some like unique challenges that we run into adding champions. I'd say like one of the things that becomes very meaningful as a metric that we've had lots and lots of conversations about are champions that are much more narrow in their focus. Uh-huh. So like we had Pike, who is probably like the quintessential version of that, where he wants you to have lurkers. Lurkers want you to have lurkers in your deck. How can we like find the right balance of naturally our mode wants you to like take a wider assortment of cards. He wants you to take a really narrow set of cards. How do we find the balance? And we previously with Saltwater Scourge, we had some like specific encounters that can only occur if you're playing a champion.
Oh, okay.
We've continued those. They're a little hidden. They may not call attention to themselves enough, but you might encounter Ripper's Bay if you're playing Pike, which doesn't show up as a special encounter for other champs.
Well, that makes sense.
And then we had like those the powers as part of the meta progression that we could also give to try to like help find a balance for some of those champs that are particularly narrow or have particular demands about how you build your deck.
No, that makes sense because, like, yeah, I mean, Pike specifically, like you said, is like I mean, it's not that he's, less good or more good or whatever. It's just he does a specific thing very well. But like you said, like if you're playing Pike, it could feel bad if you're not getting any lurk synergy and stuff like that. So.
Or Yasuo is another like fine example of it, and we've got a couple of relics that go bananas with Yasuo because you're gonna just get free stuns off of them. And that was actually a big lesson. Sorry, I'm jumping all around
perfect.
here.
I love it.
Okay, a big lesson that we learned in the original Lab of Legends, going back in time to that moment where we first added. The first release, we picked champions that were actually very like open-ended relatively in each of the regions. Then we wanted to bring in like the new hotness to the mode. We added Talia, and she struggled a bit, and that was the loud conversation that players were having at the time. Was frustration because like she was having trouble, just getting off those landmark synergies because like the powers and everything weren't there to support her. And we were like, oh, we really need to make sure as a new champion comes in that we're having opportunities for them to kind of live their dream. And so we made sure there were like some of the powers in that larger pool were like very aimed at the different champions such that you could live the Talia dream, you could live, the Pike dream, etc. Yeah. No,
that makes sense. All right, I'm gonna ask you to bring your biases out because I'm curious.
Yes.
We'll just stick to Path of Champions now. Sure. Do you have a favorite champion to play as?
So on live, I have beaten the mode with Pike because I wanted to see that happen. Mm-hmm. As a player, I feel like. So I think Lulu I was having a ton of fun with. Yeah. I think that play pattern of like, you wanna get your supports in, you wanna get like tiny units that she's gonna make grow is really fun. And I also just really enjoy the Jinx power that you get in the meta progression. Yeah. That like that discard synergy is just like really satisfying. And she's such a fun character that like. Those three are the ones that I feel like I'm playing here first.
Yeah, I love it. I for whatever reason I'm biased. I think my favorite is probably Misfortune, and
sure.
She's just really fun. But I feel like this is the mode that kind of unlocks the full potential that like the Misfortune you could never have in like a live PvP environment where you have like Scout Misfortune and all the crazy stuff or like when you get the power up order that starts a free attack on like the card when you play it. Like you level up Misfortune the turn you play her, and it like that sort of stuff is fun because like you said, beating up the AI, that's completely fine. We're allowed to be mean to the computers. They haven't taken over yet, so we're fine at the moment.
Well, but now they make faces back at you, which
I want to ask about that because that's something I when I was first going through, I did the early access event and played it like right before it came out, and I was like, I for a moment I thought I screwed up and like queued against someone because I saw the emotes coming myself, and I was like, am I getting BM'd by the computer right now? Who decided to allow the computer to BM us as human beings?
So the decision to do that came from me, but it was Alex, who was an intern and now has joined the team, who actually did all of the work around the emote system. And so he was very specifically like looking at like ways to create AI personalities. And, there's some tuning. I understand people get very angry at that Lux that's like, constantly giving you that thumbs up. But I mean, all the more reason to hate the AI and like want to get in there to pound them. Yeah.
No, it's funny because I think it might have been the Lux emote because that's like my go-to whenever my opponent's BMing me or like they rope me or do something. I just give them the thumbs up, like, good job, buddy, you did the thing. And then the computer did it to me, and I'm like, you jerk. I was like, how dare you, the AI, do this to me?
I will say I do think it is a little overtuned, and we will, lower the frequency of some of those. But I do just love, like with all of this, all of it is so fresh that there's tuning to do. But it's I really do enjoy the layer that gives to like feeling, the thing that you can lose from PvE and playing versus an AI is that like sense of connection. But like some of this restores that in, maybe some aggressive ways where you want to punch your opponent, but
I think that's the big thing, is trying to figure out how to make it feel like it's a living game. It's one of those things, anyone who's played, physical paper card games for so many years, trying to capture that feel in a digital environment is tough. Sitting in front of your opponent, you can't have that interaction. So I thought it was super clever to just that they're giving some sort of personality back to us as we're playing the thing. So I loved it. I've seen some people tweet about it, like the damn AI sitting me the Lux emote, and like, it's okay. Like they didn't have hard feelings.
We can tune it, but also like, yes, the fact that you're having an emotional reaction to the AI actions, I think is a win.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, did you freeze? Or did I freeze? Oh, yep, you're there.
I think we're good. Typical, chat program that I'm not going to give any credit to in the background that we're using, making this always work. As were there, the other one I wanted to ask, do you have any favorite passive powers?
That is interesting. So I mentioned Trifarian Might before. I love doing that deck. Like the fact of like, I have an excuse to like pick giant units and have them smash my opponent. Yeah. I think that's fun. Okay, I'm going to jump to the story Perfect. For one other
Love
second.
It, yes.
One of the things that I think, like a lesson we learned from the original Lab of Legends, was, kind of naturally the way, items that sometimes internally we'll call stickers. That was the original name.
Yeah.
Game that we constantly use in playtesting. That the way items work naturally lends itself to pile them all on like a really low cost card and get kind of like maximum value, because like +2 +2 +3 +3 is like better when you put it on Zoe than when you put it on like a big champ. And so we've actually spent a lot of time talking about like, well, we like the way those systems work, how can we naturally like encourage with these rules like slower play, like can you build a control deck? Can you like make a 6-cost champ work? Things like that. And there's some subtle frequency manipulations that go on, but a lot of it is just like finding good powers that are like, hey, this slows the game down and it's powerful, like the one that frostbites every round or things. And so maybe not my favorite deck to play, but like I love those ones in there that can like really encourage like different strategies, and particularly ones that like go slower and like, let you take your time for encounters.
No, and that's like, I think that's a lot of the, lasting power of the mode, is like trying to figure out those different synergies that may not work for one champion that you play, but is like quintessential to winning with another one. I think the Frostbite one's one of my favorite. I end up taking it all the time, even if I don't need it. It's just good. I'm like, free Frostbites. How is that not good?
So what is your favorite power?
I generally always take that one, the Frostbite. Anything that's giving me Poros, I'm happy about as well. Anything that lets me rally too many times, the rally, that's another one I just kind of windmill pick. It shows me rally as an option. I just take it because I'm like, how is not attacking every single turn? How is that not good? Seems fine.
Yeah. I also like the one that starts with a 2-drop from your deck.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Like, especially if you can like engineer like the right card for that to bring out like the perfect combo for you.
Yeah, I think that's been some of the on like the Saltwater Scourge, or like the Lab of Legends, some of the like harder champions to do with, like the slower ones, all the Lysandra type champions, when you can just get the pull out a 2-cost and you just buff that card over and over, like you're grabbing a Elise or something and you're just like, I'm just making this a monster, and then you never play the champions you built the deck around. That's pretty fun. Well, I mean, is there, as we're wrapping up here, was there anything else you kind of wanted to shout out, bring to light, anything kind of that you wanted to chat about as we're wrapping up?
I'll give a shout out to the other designers on the team. So I mentioned Mel and Alex. Xian Li is the other one who has been. She does a lot of the she's in charge of a lot of the balance stuff and is kind of like we're basically co-leads for the mode. And then James and Connor are the other two. So shout out to the design team.
Yeah, you guys do.
Obviously, there's a million people beyond the designers, but I'll shout them out specifically.
The people you probably interact with way too often.
On a daily basis. Yeah.
They're probably messaging you right now, letting you know about all the things you messed up talking about.
It's so true.
I love it. I have to ask before we get out of here, or else I will get skewered by someone in chat. Can you give us any teasers, any tidbits of the future going forward? Feel free to say no, but anything at all, any morsels?
So, I mean, the big thing, I can't give you anything that spicy.
Yeah.
What I will say is, this mode is going to be part of the game, so we are absolutely going to keep supporting it. You're going to see more champions, you're going to see more regions, you're going to see more adventures. Some of those things are actively getting work and ready to, go out the door in a couple patches. Some of them are, there is bigger stuff that we are talking about where this will continue to evolve, and you'll see, what I hope continue to be improvements. I particularly am, excited by the way we're able to integrate in story. Hope we get to do more of that. I'm excited by the way that the meta progression is there. That's going to continue to evolve. So I know I am very biased, but I am very excited for the future of the game. I am excited to be able to say more, hopefully soon.
Well, maybe we'll have you come back later, another time when you can talk about things you couldn't talk about now. But Shawn, thanks so much for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Well, hopefully we hang out again sometime, but thanks for hanging out, and I'll let you get back on with your day. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe, hit the little bell notification, and help me destroy the YouTube algorithm overlords by leaving a comment and liking this video. I appreciate you very much. You're amazing, and until next time, you stay saucy.